My mother-in-law and my mother went to elementary, middle, and high school together. They knew each other, but they weren't close friends, so they rarely spoke to each other. That's what I heard. My now husband, Logan, proposed to me last year. But shortly after that, my father's company went bankrupt. My mother-in-law hated my mother, but she still reluctantly allowed the marriage because my father was the president of the company. So as soon as she found out that my father's company went bankrupt, she came to my workplace and called me out while I was at work to say, "Marriage with a family with no money is a shame. Break up with my son, quickly." As usual, she treated my family as if we were poor. "You don't know anything. You'll regret it," I thought it to myself. Let me tell you a story about whose life suddenly turned into a nightmare. I am Naomi, 28 years old. I work as a pharmacist at a dispensary near my parents' house. I spent 6 years at my university pharmacy school. I came back to my hometown to become a licensed pharmacist. My husband was one of my classmates in high school. After graduating from high school, like most of us do, we went our separate ways. When I came back to my hometown during my vacation, he had just returned from college as well, and we met again. We started dating. I had heard that my mother-in-law went to school with my mother, but I never had the chance to meet her. So I didn't think anything of it, but she wasn't the same. Few years after we started dating, he and I promised to spend the holidays together in our hometown. All of our good friends from high school were going to join us there. We decided to have a party for the first time in a long time. They were all curious and wanted to hear about me and Logan's relationship too. Logan offered to let us have a party at his parents' house. His parents' house was originally a landowner's house in this area, and it is what you might call a mansion. He used to say, "It's just a big house. It's too cold and I don't like it." But in reality, it was indeed a magnificent house. I was surprised at how spacious the entrance was. The entrance alone is bigger than my room. "Come on, everybody, get up here." When he saw that we had all been so overwhelmed by the size of the room, said so and welcomed us in. And to get to his room, we went down the hallway past several guest rooms, and then we went up the stairs to the second floor. He told me that he was allowed to use the whole second floor. His room was at the far end of the hallway. There was a sofa and a big TV. On the other side, there was a bed and a desk. It was much larger than what you would think of when you hear the word his room. There is no comparison. Logan even ordered catering for us, and we all had a nice chat and enjoyed the party. After a while, I asked to use the bathroom. He followed me because it was downstairs. "Your house is gorgeous and huge. I could get lost." "Yeah, it's huge, but cold and uncomfortable to live in." "Wow, they look expensive too." I peeked into what looked like a big vase on a shelf by the hallway. Then all of a sudden, Don't touch them. Poor people like you shouldn't." I was surprised to hear her loud voice, and it was my mother-in-law. "If a poor person touches it and breaks it, you can't pay for it, can you?" "Well, I didn't break anything." "Mom, she was just looking at it. What's wrong with you?" "There's nothing wrong with me. I'm saying this for the poor girl. She is tall, slender, and beautiful, but she had a wrinkle between her eyebrows and she looks very scary.
What do you mean poor? Naomi is not poor.
So, she's Watson's daughter after all. My mother-in-law said so, with a horrified look on her face. She looks poor. If she steals anything from our house, we won't approve of it.
What are you talking about? Naomi would never do such a thing.
With that, my mother-in-law went back down the hall. It seemed that my mother-in-law did not like my mother. After the party, I went back to my parents' house and asked my mother about my mother-in-law. She told me a story that I never expected to hear. My grandmother, my mother's father, had failed in business before she was enough to go to school. He had come here from New York to escape with his family after his business failed. Grandpa worked as a delivery man for a liquor store. He managed to support the family by working there for years. So as a child, when my mother wore shoes, she couldn't even ask her parents to buy her a new pair. But Grandpa worked hard and was able to run his own liquor store. That was Watson's Liquor, which my father has now taken over. My mother-in-law was the one who bullied my mother for her poverty. It smells bad in here, doesn't it? Oh, that's the smell of poverty. Stay away from me. I'll get sick. She used to say things like that to my mother. My mother-in-law was the daughter of a rich family. She was always surrounded by a lot of people, but they were just bribed by her money. My mother-in-law and her cronies always would pick on my mother, ignore her, and harass her. My mother-in-law had a crush on this boy who was in their class. She always gave him toys and sweets. One day, however, my mother-in-law was picking on my mother, as she always was. Where did you get that sweater? It's so tacky. Then the boy found out my mother-in-law teasing my mother. Hey, stop it. Don't you do such a thing. You're always picking on her and isolating her from the other guys. She was such a jerk. Everyone said so. No, I don't.
Let's get out of here. Come on, follow me.
Oh, okay. After that, she stopped being mean to my mother. My mother-in-law went to school with my mother all through elementary, middle, and high school. She never spoke to my mother. I see. It's a long-standing grudge from elementary school. After a while, Logan and I continued our relationship, and he proposed to me on my birthday last year. Every time I saw my mother-in-law, she kept calling me a poor girl or a thieving cat. I try not to pay much attention to it. After graduating from a university, he returned to his hometown and joined a major company. However, he had studied business management at a university and had always wanted to start his own business. While working for a company, he has been steadily building a network of his contacts for his future. Of course, I could think of no one else to marry but him. However, right after we registered our marriage, my father's company, Watson's Liquor, went bankrupt. My mother-in-law hated my mother, but she still reluctantly allowed the marriage because my father was the president of the company. So as soon as she found out that my father's company went bankrupt, she came to my workplace and called me out while I was at work to say, "Marriage with a family with no money is a sham. Break up with my son, quickly." As usual, she treated my family as if we were poor. You don't know anything. You regret it, I thought to myself. The truth is, my father's company went bankrupt, but it was because my father wanted to start a new business that could make the local community more prosperous. The company was originally a grocery store that mainly sold alcoholic beverages. But he wanted to create a company that would focus more on local products and also spread them to other countries. So even though the company went bankrupt, it did not mean that things were not going well. It would have been difficult to have a proper meeting for the two families together, because my mother-in-law would have interfered at every turn. So we decided to skip the wedding ceremony and registered our marriage for the time being. My family liked Logan, and we often gathered to have dinner together. On my mother's birthday, I booked a best-known Italian restaurant in the area. This was actually a plan that Logan and I came up with together. My mother and his mother would never see each other. The plan was to coincidentally meet the two. Yes, Logan was going to bring his mother to this restaurant. My mother and I were seated by the window, which was the largest table in the restaurant. My father used to frequent this restaurant, and so did my mother and I, and the staff knows as well. Logan and my mother-in-law were seated next to us at the very back by the kitchen. They arrived just as we are finishing our appetizers.
Naomi? Oh, hi, Mother. It's been a while.
Oh, hi, Logan. Are you having dinner with your mother too?
That's right. We heard this place is the best.
My mother-in-law remained silent, but when they sat down,
I've just remembered I have something to do. So just eat and get out of here. Please order the dishes that can be served the soonest.
And as it was, I was having trouble making a connection to talk with her. Naomi, is this kind of a plan? Isn't it? What should I do? My mother asked me in a whisper. My mother-in-law hates us and still treats us like a poor people. So I thought it would be a good opportunity for us to talk and get to know each other. I told my mom the reason in a whisper. She said, "Okay, let me handle it," and walked over to Logan and my mother-in-law's table. We certainly hadn't been close since we were kids, but our children trust each other very much, and they made a great couple. I don't think it's right for us, as mothers, to get in their way by dwelling on things that happened a long time ago. Why don't we try to be friends again?
Dwell on a past?
What are you talking about? I'm selective about who I talk to or make friends with. My friends are all decent people, including the wife of the president of the great Johns Hopkins Hospital and the wife of a lawyer. I don't want poor people like you. It was a long time ago that I was poor. Now I can live a normal life. I'm saying I don't feel the need to deal with people who are normal. My mother did her best. It didn't change my mother-in-law's mind or her attitude. As for the wife of the director of Johns Hopkins Hospital, my mother-in-law bragged about, Dr. Hopkins had invested in my father's new company. My father and Dr. Hopkins were classmates at the top school around here. They were best friends and still go out for drinks together. My father's other best friend, Mr. Moore, is also a friend at the same school. He is the president of a big electronics franchise store. The three of them often go golfing together. Moreover, Logan's father works for Mr. Moore's company. My mother-in-law does not know this. One day, my mother-in-law and her friends had lunch at the hotel. My mother joined them for the first time. Dr. Hopkins' wife introduced my mother to everyone. This is Mrs. Watson, the wife of my husband's best friend. I hope you all get along well with her. My mother told me later that my mother-in-law was very surprised. My mother told my father that my mother-in-law didn't think well of our marriage and was disturbing. He contacted his best friend, Dr. Hopkins, and asked his wife to cooperate with him. My mother-in-law, as expected, could not raise any objections right then and there. She was so proud of her friend, the wife of the president of the great Johns Hopkins Hospital. Of all people, to introduce a classmate whom she hated for a long time. My mother-in-law kept quiet that day. But there was no way she was just going to keep her mouth shut. She called each of the wives individually and gave them expensive gifts. She told them about my mother's past and made them hate her and exclude her from their circle of friends. And she gave the same expensive gifts to Mrs. Hopkins and said, I don't think it's good to get involved with such a poor person. I had no idea you were this vile. I heard that you gave everyone gifts and spoke ill of Mrs. Watson, that you were asking them to exclude her from the group. No, I was just trying to make sure you weren't fooled. I was just trying to let you know the truth. We can no longer treat you as our friend. I will not be calling on you again. I'm sorry, but I have to say goodbye. My mother-in-law lost a friend she was proud of. One day, Mr. Moore invited Logan's father to play golf with him. He also invited his best friends, my father and Dr. Hopkins. And the four of them went golfing together, and they all have a great time like high school students.
Wow, this was really fun. I'd love it if you would invite me again.
Of course we will. Right, Doug?
Sure, and I have a great time as well. I'm thinking of going overseas to play golf next time. Wanna come?
Yes, I'd love to join you. Logan's father went home that day in a very good mood. He is usually a quiet person, but that day he couldn't help but tell his wife how happy he was.
They were such nice, cool people, and it was so much fun.
Huh? So what? I don't have time to listen to your happy stories. All she could think about was how she was going to lose her friend and the huge debt she had spent on gifts.
You were always in a bad mood, and you are a disgusting woman. You make me feel bad when I'm with you. I've reached the end of my rope, and I'm getting a divorce.
Divorce? What nonsense! You were divorcing me? Don't be silly. You were alone. You have no one. What would you do without me?
I've got friends. Stop disrespecting me. I've had enough.
You serious? No way. And my mother-in-law got divorced and kicked out of the house. Her rich friends, of whom she was so proud, cut her off. All that was left were the debts she spent on gifts. She had secretly borrowed the money on her own. Logan and I continued to enjoy our newlywed life as husband and wife. We bought a house together. He told me that he wanted a house that was moderately spacious and warm. Now my parents and Logan's father are visiting us in our new house. This house will surely be a place where the family will make many memories together.